Hey everybody. So, thrillingly, we have some new subs to our little channel, and they are not as deeply entrenched in the troon battles as I know most of you are. Um, in the interest of explaining myself and my attitude problems, I am going to read a thread, and I'll comment while I'm doing so, from a gal named Brenda out on Twitter, explaining a lot of the basic issues with the trans cult. And I'll just cut in every little bit with my own commentary. But I will try and keep it reasonable and not ranty, because I know some people are new and they don't understand or haven't heard about all the lies that they've been told. They just don't realize. So I'm out here trying to get cactus land set up. It's been trapped upstairs for months while we had this whole porch full of appliances. We're down to just a few now, and I'm just potting up some of the little bits and bobs. So let me set this up somewhere where you can look at something nice while I'm filming. That's kind of nice. Okay. Okay, here we go. There are so many things most people do not know about trans ideology. These are some of them. Trans, and I love that she puts trans almost every single time in quotes. I really respect that. Trans used to mean transsexual, a very small group of people, mostly men, who suffered from a lifelong sense of gender dysphoria and sought medical remedies, hormones, and surgery to relieve their suffering. Now, the vast majority of men identifying as trans are straight men with autogynephilia, meaning they derive sexual pleasure from thinking of themselves as women. We used to call this cross-dressing. That is why most men identifying as trans don't get or seek surgery. Over 90%. They are fully intact straight males. Please keep this fact in mind while we go through the rest of this thread. That's me talking, and the horror of that. Women's prisons, changing rooms, and bathrooms have been historically single-sex for reasons of safety and privacy. Over 97% of sexual crimes are committed by men. Since women cannot tell the predators by looks alone, single-sex spaces are intended to promote safety. Men who identify as trans have committed murders. See, e.g., Dana Rivers. If I could just cut in for a minute on that. Dana Rivers terrorized the Michigan Women's Music Festival at a place called Camp Trans that was set up outside the gates, where they literally patrolled with like knives and baseball bats, and he eventually killed a couple of women. I think that he had probably met out there, but he killed them, I think, out in California. Okay. Men who identify as trans have committed murders and rapes. Stephen Hayes. Men identifying as trans have been transferred to women's prisons and committed multiple sexual assaults. Me again, they have also impregnated women in the prison. Imagine the horror of that. And I will ask you if they really were women. I know my wife and I mean, besides the fact that we're postmenopausal, but we don't need to worry about birth control, right? There's a reason for that, right? Okay, because they're not women, they're men. Back to the thread. If you want to search for it, but I recommend you don't, men identifying as trans have filmed and published all sorts of porn with the setting of women's restrooms. Trans ideology poses a danger to children and young people who are taking off-label hormones and undergoing surgery. Hormone blockers are not medically approved for children identifying as trans. Their use is experimental. While the effects of hormone blockers may be reversible in the sense that when stopped, the hormones might start up again, the effects of the pause on children and adolescent bodies may be damaging and permanent, affecting bone and brain development and fertility. You know, if you think about, back to me again, if you think about somebody named Jazz, like Jazz Jennings, who was trans at a very young age, he has never experienced an actual puberty. And you think about all the development as yourself as a person that goes on during puberty. He missed out on all of that because his mother is a sick fuck. But That's true for a lot of other kids now. They're just playing around with these dangerous hormones. They have no idea what the long-term effects are going to be. I think the medical malpractice lawsuits are going to be epic, but that won't help them. Back to the thread. Many children and adolescents grow out of feelings of being trans, but surgery, most often done on young girls in the form of double mastectomies, is quite permanent. Remember, boys and men usually keep their genitals fully intact. And I'd like to just cut out here and say I have seen 14-year-old girls who have had their breasts removed, and a lot of times these girls that this is done to are either autistic or young lesbians or both. And so it is, in a sense, also a form of conversion therapy by surgery, which is just a vicious thing to do to a confused young woman or young girl. Back to the thread. People suffering with genuine gender dysphoria, that is, a persistent lifelong feeling of being the other sex, deserve respect, privacy, and treatment if sought. Trans people are not the same as trans ideology, just as gay people are not the same as queer theory. Just me cutting in again to say I have a little bit of a quibble with this. I do not believe that trans is a real thing at all. I believe it is a mental disorder at best, a social contagion at worst, like anorexia. And I do not believe people benefit from being surgically altered in order to treat a mental condition, just like we don't cut off the limbs or blind people with body dysmorphia disorder. And as far as gay people being the same as queer theory, queer is a slur. I hate that word. I cannot stand that straight people feel free to just bandy that word around and think that they're doing something there. I hate that word. Back to the thread. Trans ideologues have also done damage to the gay community, I'll say. They have attacked gay people, calling them transphobic for refusing to date people with opposite sex genitals. They have brought down, among other things, Boston Pride and the Michigan Women's Music Festival. I have talked about the Michigan Women's Festival in other videos. I won't go on here, but that is a heartbreaker that I will never get over. And if you want to think about the gay people, what she isn't saying here is that young lesbians are basically being correctively raped by men calling themselves trans. And if they don't go along with this, they get shunned out of their communities, they lose all their friends, and they are told that they are transphobic and deserve to be beaten to death. Basically, TERFs must die. Back to the thread. Note that most of the accusations of transphobia are directed at women who seek to preserve same-sex spaces and rights. There's even a word for it, TERF. T-E-R-F. When women speak out in an effort to preserve their rights, whether for safety, privacy, or fairness, as in sports, they are subject to vicious attacks, often accompanied by death threats. See J.K. Rowling. She's our hero. There have also been, it's me again. There have also been many physical attacks on women at marches and at protests by trans because we don't accept them as women. She says, that's it for now. Just thoughts for a Monday morning. Recommended reading, The Emperor's New Clothes. Okay, I got through it that time. So I think that's a really great place to start. And I have a million resources for anybody that is interested, a million channels I can point you to, a million women who are much more well-spoken and reasonable than me explaining this. But stick around for unhinged rants and chicken videos. Anyway, and welcome to everybody. And thank you so much for asking and being open-hearted about it. I can't tell you what a relief it is. Thank you.